Hello everybody and welcome back to another EDH deck tech idea. Today I'm talking about Obeka, Splitter of Seconds. She's a 4 mana 2/5 with Menace, and whenever she deals combat damage to a player, you get that many additional upkeep steps after this phase. Obeka allows you to have several upkeeps in your turn, and so you need to draw as much value as possible from these additional upkeeps. There are a ton of cards in Grixis colors that synergize with your upkeep, but here are some of my favorites. You're definitely playing all of the different chords, for example Chord of Cunning, a 3 mana enchantment, and when it enters the battlefield you become the Monarch. At the beginning of your upkeep, any number of target players each mill 2 cards. If you're the Monarch, each of those players mill 10 cards instead. If you bring this one out in your first main phase and then you are able to connect with Obeka, you are immediately the Monarch, and then you can mill all of your opponents for exactly 20 cards. Chord of Ambition, 4 mana enchantment, when it enters the battlefield you become the Monarch, and at the beginning of your upkeep each opponent loses 3 life unless they discard a card. If you're the Monarch, instead each of those opponents lose 6 life unless they discard 2 cards. If this one resolved and you are able to connect, your opponents will be in a lot of trouble, because it barely matters what they choose, it's definitely going to hurt them. Chord of Ire, a 5 mana enchantment, when it enters the battlefield you become the Monarch, and at the beginning of your upkeep, Chord of Ire deals 2 damage to any target. If you're the Monarch, it deals 7 damage to that player or permanent instead. Either you ping your opponents for a total of 14 damage, or you keep controlling the board with pinging down some creatures. Chord of Ventress, 4 mana enchantment, when it enters the battlefield you become the Monarch, and at the beginning of your upkeep choose up to 1 other target enchantment or artifact. If you're the Monarch, you may create a token that's a copy of it. If you are not the Monarch, you may have Chord of Ventress become a copy of it, except it has this ability. I believe you see where this is going. If you already have a chord on the field and Chord of Ventress enters the battlefield and you make it to your next upkeep, this can become a very powerful synergy. Chord of Locthwain, a 4 mana enchantment, and when it enters the battlefield you become the Monarch. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of target opponent's library. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled, and mana of any type can be spent to cast it. If you're the Monarch, until end of turn you may cast a spell from among cards exiled with Chord of Locthwain without paying its mana costs. And last but not least, Chord of Embereth, a 4 mana enchantment, and when it enters the battlefield you become the Monarch. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a 3/1 Red Knight creature token. Then, if you're the Monarch, Chord of Embereth deals X damage to each opponent, where X is the number of creatures you control. You're not only going to win by all of the different chords, you're also going to win with some additional upkeep triggers from creatures. For example, Dragon Master Outcast, a 1 mana 1/1, and at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 6 or more lands, create a 5/5 Red Dragon creature token with flying. Xanathar, Guild Kingpin, a 6 mana 5/6, and at the beginning of your upkeep choose target opponent. Until end of turn that player can't cast spells. You may look at the top card of their library anytime, you may play the top card of their library, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast spells this way. Herald of Leshrac, a 7 mana 2/4 with flying, cumulative upkeep, gain control of a land you don't control, and Herald of Leshrac gets +1/+1 for each land you control but don't own. When he leaves the battlefield, each player gains control of each land he or she owns that you control. Depending on how many upkeeps you get with Herald of Leshrac on the battlefield, you'll be able to steal a bunch of lands from your opponents. Creeping Bloodsucker, a 2 mana 1/2, and at the beginning of your upkeep, Creeping Bloodsucker deals 1 damage to each opponent. You gain life equal to the damage dealt this way. Plague and Nasari, a 5 mana 5/4, and at the beginning of your upkeep, each player exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card. An opponent chooses a non-land card exiled this way. You may cast up to 2 spells from among the other cards exiled this way without paying their mana costs. Joyra of the Githu, a 3 mana 2/2, and for 2 generic, exiling a non-land card from your hand, put 4 time counters on the exiled card. If it doesn't have Suspend, it gains Suspend. The powerful thing about Suspend is that the counter is removed in your upkeep, and so you can gain a very powerful advantage with Suspend cards in this deck. The most important thing in this deck is that Obeka connects, so we have to make her unblockable. We will use cards like Winged Boots, a 2 mana artifact equipment, and equipped creature as flying and ward 4, and we can equip it for 1. Trailblazer Boots, a 2 mana artifact equipment, and equipped creature as non-basic landwalk, and we equip it for 2 mana. Whisper Silk Cloak, a 3 mana artifact equipment, and equipped creature can't be blocked and has Shroud. It is equipped for 2 mana. Sword Coast Sailor, a 2-mana legendary enchantment background, and commander creatures you own have, whenever this creature attacks a player, if no opponent has more life than that player, this creature can't be blocked this turn. You also play Aqueous Form, a 1-mana enchantment aura, enchant creature, and enchanted creature can't be blocked. Whenever enchanted creature attacks, scry 1. And there's also Ether Tunnel, a 2-mana enchantment aura, an enchanted creature gets +1/+0 and can't be blocked. You want to win more? You get it. Roaming Throne, a 4-mana 4/4 with Ward 2, and as it enters the battlefield choose a creature type, which will either be Ogre or Warlock, and Roaming Throne is the chosen type in addition to its other types. If a triggered ability of another creature you control of the chosen type triggers, it triggers an additional time. And yes, you guessed it completely right, this will double Obeka's Connect trigger. Strionic Resonator, a 2-mana artifact, and for 2 mana and tapping it, copy target triggered ability you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. Braids, Conjurer Adept, a 4-mana 2/2, and at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player may put an artifact, creature or land from their hand onto the battlefield. Braids is always a very high risky card, but with you getting additional upkeeps, you can draw a bunch of value from it. Mechanized Production, a 4-mana enchantment aura and enchant artifact you control. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a token that's a copy of enchanted artifact. Then if you control 8 or more artifacts with the same name as one another, you win the game. You also play Sphinx of the Second Sun, an 8-mana 6/6 with flying, and at the beginning of your post-combat main phase there is an additional beginning phase after this phase. This card gets completely out of hand with Obeka and if you have a way to constantly connect with Obeka. And last but not least, Silent Arbiter, a 4-mana 1/5, and no more than one creature can attack each combat, and no more than one creature can block each combat. This is extremely powerful because Obeka has Menace, so with Silent Arbiter on the field you can make sure to always connect with her. Alright guys, these were a few cards that I would play in Obeka Splitter of Seconds. Let me know down in the comments below which cards you would add to the deck, which legendary creature I shall feature next, and then I would say, see you in the next one. Goodbye guys.